Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast. Where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. My good friend over there in Tequila, Georgia, Fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is here once again, a month and a half away. My longest, as I talked about on the Sunday Tennessee Fall Sports Guy show, the longest break I've taken in my post-undergraduate life, actually from the podcast, taking a little over a month and a couple weeks. But you know, it was time. Sometimes you just need to recharge. Like you need to take a step back, and you're like, man, I'm running on fumes here in my mid 30s. I'm in that load management phase of my career here in podcasting. So I appreciate
you, Kawhi Leonard over there.
I really am Kawhi. I'm in that Kawhi. I'm picking my spots. It doesn't mean like, hey, maybe I don't need to do 72 games. I'll just do 55, and and still do 55 at an elite level.
You're not going to be making any All-NBA teams, you know, but you got to
making any All-NBA teams
for your long-term health.
Matt Green, how are you, sir?
Doing great, man. I missed you. You know, it's been a long time since we had our conversations here. I know your Tennessee people missed a little bit of Georgia fandom thrown in there. You guys, all this orange and everything. I need to mellow you guys out up there.
Number 1 overall seed right here, still alive, going in the supers. Georgia baseball though, are you going to be? And I was thinking about this the last couple weeks.
Dawgs, like, man, still alive.
If you do this, I guess I don't know. I shouldn't do that. Like, if you get into it, good. You should get into it. But are you going to do this? Are you going to be like, man, are you watching every Georgia baseball game? Or are you still like, no, it's just, I'm Braves. It's just, it doesn't get me. Because if this doesn't get you for Georgia baseball right now, you're never going to catch the college baseball bug.
No, I mean, I'm not a college baseball guy, but whenever the tournament comes around, it's like it becomes more interesting. I'm keeping track of it. It's like it's not on TV. I mean, some games are on SEC Network and stuff, so you can't really. There's some ESPN Plus, I guess. I was watching Georgia Tech the other night, the game that put them in. But I didn't watch the whole game. I was watching like 7th, 8th, 9th inning or so. Did it go to 10? I want to say.
I don't know. It's your team, Matt Green. I think it did go to 10. I think they loaded the bases twice. Tech loaded the bases twice and could not. Tech, I just feel like, had way more. Jordan Beck and company were flicking them off as we beat them in the regionals 2 years ago. I don't know. I feel like Tech had a bad upset in the regionals or super regionals last year. I feel like they get hit in the gut more than most college baseball teams because they're always good. They're always in the 64 team field, but I just feel like they unfortunately just keep getting punched in the gut. And then Georgia making this run after 16 years, the last time they were in the super regionals. So
yeah, I heard that stat of the 16 years since they've been to the super regional, and I was like, that's not possible because they went to the super regional when the year I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that was, in fact, 16 years ago. So that checks out. But I couldn't get past the Tech's like 2010s San Diego Padres look they had going on. Just the all gold, like
I like that. It looked
gold
good.
pants. No, it was terrible. Oh, they look so awful. Georgia Tech, it's like the people that want to get rid of that Georgia Tech rivalry, like it's the young Georgia fans that really just never really appreciate it because Tech's just kind of been just a punching bag the whole time they've been fans. You need to play Tech every once in a while. It kind of reminds you of that rivalry because Georgia Tech, it is a good thing.
It is a good thing, Matt Green. And hey, North Carolina, the state of North Carolina is trying to ensure that those kind of games don't go anywhere with their legislation this week, trying to legislate these teams play together. Mario Cristobal talking about this week that Miami, Florida, and Florida State should always play each other each and every year. I mean, it's one of those things, yeah, like that'd be good. Legislation's like putting your money where your mouth is, no matter where realignment goes. Keep these things like locked in. That'd be cool. Like you're breaking the law by not playing these games and these rivalry games every year. That's pretty cool.
I personally think I'm here for it. Yeah, if like we have to do something, because I mean, you remember Auburn, Alabama. We don't remember it, but they didn't play each other for like 50 years or something until like the 60s or 70s or something. I think they picked the rivalry back up. because they actually hate each other that much. And I think A&M and Texas had a similar situation at one point in their history where they just stopped playing each other. And it's like one's trying to flex, especially you got like an Oklahoma State situation. Like, peace out. We're going to the big boy league. You're down here. Like, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Bedlam still needs to happen every year. Like, I don't care what conference they're in. So I think personally, the future is the schools aren't making their own schedules anyway. I think that's the only reasonable future. We're getting to this. I don't know. I don't want it to be a super league. It's starting to resemble the super league that European soccer talked about. And like, that might be entertaining if you're involved. If you're one of the 20, yeah, it might be fun. But I hope we don't get to that. But I think with way college football is going, I don't think you can continue to have these athletic directors just like, oh no, we're just gonna play like a couple easy games at a conference, and we're actually like with this 12-team playoff and everything. I think that's ultimately the future of like, maybe the conferences are setting schedules, or just some governing body is setting the schedules so that you have some sort of balance on conference games, like everyone playing the same number of conference games, and then having to play some sort of formula for getting competitive out of conference games too. I think that's the ultimate future.
I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely on the table. When it comes to the Super League, like, there's just so many more moving parts. I'm not going to predict anything. If you looked at like even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, where the sport would be, I don't know. I think there's still a lot of moving parts. I don't think the ACC will be here in 2 years. We'll see what that means for both conferences. But I also just, when people forget about the Super League stuff at this point, like, still what I think about when it comes to Super League, I don't think it's going to be that small. Like, the Super League was really, really tiny in Europe, and it was like a 12, 13 teams, I think, total, if I remember correctly, like how many were involved. So it's going to be like, if they get to that point, I still think it will be 50 to 60, maybe 40 on the low end. It won't be like 30. 30's low, man. Like, I don't think it will be that low. But I also think, as someone who covers high school football, and you and I growing up in the South, like, one of the things we saw, and it's just kind of, and when you cover these games and stuff like that, there's a difference between, let's put out like Milton right now. Milton's putting out a lot of time. Buford right now. There is a difference between Buford
30 years.
Yeah, there's a difference, but I'm saying like Buford now, in the amount of D1 players, Power 5 players on this roster, and some of the big boys, Colquitts of the world, they're playing a different sport than some of these small schools like Shiloh. Like, they're playing a different sport than Decula sometimes, depending on how their enrollment is.
Sir.
So what I'm saying is, like, it's just that I look at it as different classifications, where I'm like, if it's going to give us better football because the divide with TV dollars, with the SEC and Big Ten getting more and more, if we have to do this because the games are going to be better, because, like, yeah, we grew up with like Boise and could beat Georgia back in the day, and if like the gap continues to grow, that's not going to be fun either. So I'm like, if we go to that classifications thing where it's like, hey, the G5 has their classification, the FCS has their classification, and then the Super League has their own, where it's like they're tight, like they're all close. Like, we have 6A, 5A, 4A for a reason, and it's because we're not pretending that it's the same when GAC has certain, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's something we
probably
see in high school.
Don't really need that many classifications. Like,
we don't need that many, but we do need classifications because it is different in different athletes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And in terms of the Boise State Georgia point, like, Boise State was just better. Like, they were just a better program at that point in history. So that wasn't like some sort of upset beating a big dog.
Well, I'm saying I don't even think that's possible now. Like, even if Georgia had down years, like the players and like, I just feel like
that example is possible, because I mean, who is that? That's like Tulane knocking off, Tennessee or something. Like, not disrespecting Tennessee or anything, but like Georgia 2010, 2011, that was 2011. Like, that was a preseason like number 20 or something like that. Yeah. They weren't like some sort of juggernaut, but the point remains the same. It's going to be possible. Like, yeah, that one-off team, like Boise State was that one team in all of G5 that was capable of competing with the big time programs. And maybe one of those can happen again. I feel like the portal is probably the biggest, hurdle for one of those, small programs to build up, because they're just going to get poached when they get good players. Yeah. But yeah, I'm here for if that, like, the Power 5 or Power 4 splitting off, I don't consider that a super league. Like, I think that feels inevitable, because, like you're saying, it's more of a classification thing, Georgia Southern. Well, I guess they are FBS now,
Yeah.
but they're all becoming FBS. I almost said James Madison.
Delaware's going to the CUSA in 2 years.
Is that right? So I'm struggling to find teams. Kennesaw State is
Nope.
not playing the same sport.
Well,
that
they're in
Georgia's
USA
playing.
now.
Are they going to FBS? Kennesaw
They're
State
FBS this year.
Are you kidding me? Wow, I can't even think of any.
Here, I'll give you one. FCS currently, Montana
Chattanooga.
State. UTC, yes, they're still in there. All the SWAC schools are still FCS.
North Dakota State and all those, but North Dakota State can probably compete with some
State.
D1 teams because they're that one powerhouse.
Well, they actually play. North Dakota State, I think, has somebody where who do they have early? Is it Colorado? Who does North Dakota State have?
Oh, I think you're right. I think it is Colorado.
Where their schedule, like they have, like that's a terrible, terrible team to put when you're. Yes, they play at Colorado to open.
That's a tough one.
Buffalo, I can't wait. That's a game that I'm weirdly going to watch. Like people are going to overlook that one. That's prime time.
Well, people are going to watch Colorado regardless. Like
but I'm saying, like that one is actually
watching them, or they're going to be, carrying the torch for Dion. But people are going to be watching Colorado at least early before their season is.
Well, when you have folks still throwing out Colorado as a potential Big 12 champ, like we're all over the place. It's officially the offseason. Like Colorado is being taught. Like,
oof. I mean, as far as dark horses go,
no, they can't. Colorado's not winning the Big 12. Matt Green.
I think it's more disrespect for the Big 12 than anything. I think you're like, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I think Utah is probably the favorite coming in, but
Kansas State, Utah, like I don't know. There's just better programs. Oklahoma State, I think, is gonna be right there in the thick of things. I don't know. We'll see. But we have all the time in the world as we're 87, 86 days away.
Yeah, the last thing I was gonna say. Oh man, I need to look up the dates. Like if you look at back in I want to say 99, 2000, when Adrian Peterson, the original Adrian Peterson, was at Georgia Southern. They played Georgia in Athens when Quincy Carter was there, and there was talk this team could beat Georgia. They've won back-to-back national championships, and Georgia wasn't even really good at that time, and it was a blowout. Like it wasn't even a close game. So that's the main point you're making about there's just a different class that these programs are playing at.
Which is okay. And I'm okay with that if we get better football across the board on most Saturdays because the gap continues to...
The TV product of the G5 playoff would be amazing. What does the college basketball do? Like the bracket buster weekend they throw in there, like getting those good mid-majors playing each other. It's like, I'm here for it.
100%, Matt Green. Well, because we've been away, and I talk Tennessee and write about Tennessee each and every day and all that good stuff. My listeners are pretty filled in on what's happening with Tennessee right now. But we do this every week on this program, the Dog Bites portion of this program. What do you have over the last 6 weeks here with the Dogs? Getting a 5-star linebacker, the number one linebacker in the 2025 class today, and Zayden Walker. But what do you have for us here, Matt Green?
Oh man, you're really putting me on the spot to refresh the people over the last 6 weeks. That's a big one. Like you said today, Zayden Walker, the 5-star linebacker from Schley County, I believe is how you pronounce that.
I believe you.
I heard Rusty Mansell say it that way. It's not how I would have pronounced it, but I was looking at so Zayden Walker, the composite, I think it's got him as the 10th overall player in the country. This is now the 11th 5-star linebacker Georgia has signed since Kirby Smart got to Georgia. This is, and fun fact for you, this will be Kirby Smart's 10th recruiting class since he got to the University of Georgia, 2025. It does not seem like Kirby has been there for a decade, but he's now next to Mark Stoops. He's the second longest tenured coach in the SEC now.
Is that right?
Yeah, with Saban gone, it's Saban, Stoops, and Kirby. That's now just Stoops and Kirby. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's with Georgia. I'm sure most Georgia fans, I'm sure some Georgia fans feel this way. Like probably most fans of any college football team feel this way. The better the program gets, the less you pay attention to recruiting as a common fan. It's recruiting is the lifeblood of the sport, and you got to have elite recruits. You're always getting in the next crop. But it's back in 2012, it was I don't know, we were looking for that dream team class, that one, or that's 2011, that one player that can just set off the program. If we just get that Deshaun Watson, that could have been the guy that set us the program over the top. Now it's like I don't have to pay attention to recruiting. Kirby's got the recruiting on lock. Like I don't have to keep an eye on him. He's got it going on. And it's like you look at Georgia specifically, they signed just 5 stars on top of 5 stars. But how consistently are those players at the bottom of their class like some of the best players in the entire team? Like you look at a Lad McConkey or a Javon Bullard or Stetson Bennett for that matter. Like it just seems like time and time again, Dylan Bell, like you look at just time and time again, the lower ranked players Georgia gets like tend to be some of the best players in the class. And so the 5-star, you get the 5 stars and develop everyone else. But yeah, Georgia recruiting, I think they're up to 5th in the rankings currently. But this month of June and July, I think is when things, around the country are really going to pick up in terms of commitments.
Yeah, I mean, they had some big OVs this past weekend. Tennessee is in a battle with them for Travis Smith at a Westlake 4-star receiver, long, rangy, who I know Tennessee would really like to get in the boat here as they are looking to get one more if they can in this group. But, I mean, like you said, it's the linebackers. Like, you look at just who they also are going to try and flip. The USD kids, Isaiah Gibson, and then Justice Terry. We'll see if they're able to keep both those guys in the South here in this cycle. Shady Hayward, who Tennessee's been on for a long time at safety. We'll see if Tennessee is able to close a deal there because also another Georgia kid. But I mean, I think it's one of those where it's funny you say this about recruiting.
Is that
I feel like
Lagonzo?
Yes.
Is that his name? Lagonzo? Yeah. I'd never seen that name before.
Yeah.
Well, he goes by
Shady Hayward. Yeah, Shady Hayward.
Okay.
Yeah. But really good player. He might be a hybrid, more linebacker, depending on. We'll see what happens when he gets to college. But I think what's interesting, what you're saying, is like I wonder if that's the case for the majority of. I kind of want to do like a poll. This is like a feature story of like Alabama in the like over the years with Saban, where was there a point where you're like, well, I know we're gonna get a 5-star receiver. I know we're gonna have a 5-star defensive end. Like I know it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I'm not really.
Sorry,
like it's hard for me to get wrapped up in the recruiting intel and be like, we had so and so on their OV this weekend. It's like, no, if we push for this person, we're gonna get this person. I think that's where Kirby's at with Georgia. It's like when you're Tennessee or you're one of these schools around the South or you're one of these SEC rivals, like you're just waiting for Kirby, especially when you're having to recruit in-state because the state of Georgia is just so strong recruiting anyway, with just the amount of talent in the high school ranks in the state of Georgia. Like Kirby is looming, even if you feel good. I mean, Tennessee obviously went and got 5-star receiver Mike Matthews, who I think is going to be a really good player for Tennessee out of Parkview in Georgia. But like, I think by and large, it's just Kirby's just built this machine and you just, another 5-star linebacker, another 5-star defensive lineman, another, like it just, I do understand. I guess it's kind of apathy for Georgia fans, where it's like, yeah, we had to like when we were in the Mark Richt era, we're fighting for like we're getting excited because we're like, this will be the class that gets us over the hump. This will be the group that gets us our first title. But you won back-to-back titles. You built this machine. You're like, yeah, I think we're gonna be all right. I think it really doesn't. I think Kirby's gonna close and have another top 5 class, and we go into next year.
And there were some of those early classes too that Kirby had that like June, July, they were sitting in the 30s or something with like 5-6 commits, and people started to freak out on the message boards. And it was like, guys, Kirby's got this. We're gonna end up with a top 3 class. Like I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be really good. But yeah, like I remember a buddy of mine, an Alabama fan, like years ago, like working at the golf course, like talking about like these like freshmen that Alabama had, but it was like, it wasn't like so much as recruiting. It was like, as the season's starting, like, oh yeah, supposedly there's this guy and this guy. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I know who they are. I follow the recruiting. I see all the guys they sign. I'm well aware, but it's like, that's kind of where Georgia's at now. But yeah, to what you said though, about the USC commits, my brother sent me a screenshot earlier today, their top 3 commits in their class. And like, I knew this, but I hadn't actually seen it. And it's going to make any Georgia fan sick. It's like, you look at Justice Terry from Manchester, Georgia, Julian Lewis, Carrollton, Georgia, Isaiah Gibson, Warner Robins, Georgia. Like those are 3 top 20 players in the country right now. The 3 highest ranked commits on USC's list. So that's not what you want to see. And there's a history with Kirby Smart of these big time guys, and he's talked about it, like they're not committed. Like they can say they're committed, but they're not signed. I recruit the guys I want, so he's not going to give up. And there seems to kind of be a history of these big time 5 stars in the state of Georgia, committing somewhere else, and then eventually committing to Georgia, like in the end. Like Kirby, he's the closer, so he'll figure out how to do it. But like you go back to like a Justin Fields or like Brenton Cox were guys that were committed elsewhere, big time 5 stars that they ended up pulling. KJ Bolden in this last class. Who's the Michael Williams a couple years ago. So it's like there seems to be a lot of history of like Georgia. Kirby keeps coming after you. If he's one of the guys you want, it's hard to get out of the state. So Rusty Mansell, UGA insider, he was giving some very cryptic messages after this big weekend that Georgia had, that it was going to be a very good weekend in the long run. And I think people are speculating, Zayden Walker, we obviously saw him just commit, but a lot of it seemed to be around those USC guys that they were able to get on campus. And I think Georgia definitely is still trying to get Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson.
I'm going to go ahead and say that USC doesn't hold on to all 3. I think they probably hold on to maybe 2 of 3. I don't think they keep all 3, is my guess.
I don't know they hold on to Julian Lewis because, I mean, he just seems to be all over the place with his recruitment. I don't think he's going to go to Georgia, but I think he's a guy that just feels unpredictable. But
Hey, Chris Collinsworth entered the chat. Here's a guy that... Do you know, like Chris Collinsworth always does that on the broadcast on NFL on Sunday Night Football? He's like, here's a guy. You're doing that's what he always does. That's his bit. He's like, here's a guy who came in here. You're doing that. Here's a guy with Julian Lewis.
Okay. I look at USC, what they are, what Lincoln Riley has been as a football coach, and what they're going to put on the field in this 2024 season. If you're a defensive lineman, man, it's got to be hard to get excited about that. You could be excited about like, oh, there's a spot for me to play right now. But man, when you watch that Georgia defense play, I imagine that's going to speak to what you want to do at the next level way more than that USC defense is going to.
Yeah. Well, Matt Green, that was good. Dog bites this week. I'm glad that, let me check my notes here. Georgia's getting more 5-star talent. Great. Love it. We also found out that the College Football Playoff officially unveiled their 2024-2025 expanded playoff that we will see this year, the 12-team expansion. Matt Green, I think you have a stronger take on this than I do. So what do you make of the days, times, and what we're going to see here come December this year?
It just grinds my gears, sir. It's man, I need to come up with my own segment. Quit stealing Peter Griffin's grinding my gears. But you look at this schedule, and let's be honest. So we'll give the listeners their first take. So the first round is going to have that Friday game on December 20th, and then 3 Saturday games on the 21st, and those are going to be on campus. I'm cool with that. I don't necessarily understand the Friday instead of putting them all on Saturday, but that's fine. The one Friday night game, then 3 Saturday, that's cool. Then you got the next round, and that's, we got Tuesday. Tuesday is the New Year's Eve. The one game on New Year's Eve, and then the 3 games on the first. The 1 and 3 pattern, I don't really understand what's going on there. Just put all the games on one day, but what do I know? So got no problem with the first 2 rounds. But it's once you get to that 3rd round, sir, the Final Four, the CFP semifinal, we're putting on Tuesday or Thursday, January 9th, and then the other one on Friday, January 10th. Like, what are we doing? This sport is played on Saturdays. Like, we'll give you like the champion, the New Year's Eve stuff. Like, that's gonna fall in different days. Like, college football is typically played on New Year's Eve and January 1st. Everyone's got holidays and all that. But college football is played on Saturdays. Even the Monday championship, like, we accept, even though, like, I don't like that either. They should be played on Saturdays. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand because these are TV networks that are making these decisions, and they're just probably doing it because of TV ratings. And it's not that college football can't even compete with the NFL either. It's probably that they don't want to. They want to just get all the ratings. They want to get the ratings on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it just sucks to me. Also, people have jobs, right? Like, people have holidays and stuff over Christmas and New Year's. Like, that's why you got the bowl season and all that. They can travel during those times. Like, you're gonna go through all that. Like, who's taking PTO on Thursday, January 9th? Like, that might be a tough one to get. Like, I don't know. I feel like the ordinary people out there, they're never thinking about us.
No, but I also expected this. One of the downfalls to expansion, and adding more games, and like we know the last, like now we're doing Friday kickoffs for Big Ten, right? Like Big Ten Friday night games. That used to be like, hey, off limits for high school football. So people and fans of teams, of college football teams, they're like, hey, we want to go watch our kids. We want to go support the local high school. Like that used to be off limits, and now it's not off limits. We're going to have Big Ten games every Friday night, this college football season. I think what it is just TV dollars, where it's like this is still the moneymaker is live sports, live TV, and college football is rising in that market. They're like, how can we get college football on every night of the week outside of Sunday, obviously because of the NFL? How do we get it in as many different times? Because I think the playoff will be on every single day of the week except for one. Is that correct? Is it on every day except 6 days total? 6 of the 7 days
it's not
a week.
on a Sunday.
Yeah,
I think it's
so
on. There's a game every other day though.
right. And for me, I'm like, here's what's happening, and it's like the exhaustive content. And I feel bad. Let's go ahead and tell the good folks, all the college football fans here, you need to go ahead and get a jump start on your partner, making sure she's taken care of this holiday season, because she's gonna walk by and be like, "What is that?" Like, or he, she, whoever is gonna walk by and be like, "There can't be another game." And you're going to be like, yeah, there's another game. And then they're going to be like, wait, is this not like, when does this actually end? What do you mean there's another game today? What do you mean there's a game at noon that has playoff implicate? Like, we're getting to the point where it's like, it's getting more and more difficult to explain our watchability habits to our significant others, because like this is what it's going to be. I mean, pro wrestling did this years ago, Matt Green. I know you're not a big pro wrestling guy, but one of the reasons that like I kind of had to move on from that years ago now was that they were like, we'll just make more money. Like the content will get worse, but like we're going to put a show on every night. Like there's just too much TV money to be made, so we're going to extend Monday Night Raw from 2 hours to 3 hours. Not because
I was going to say, I grew up on Monday Night Raw, and then like Thursday Night SmackDown was a new thing, and that was around the time I stopped watching wrestling.
Well, now they do Saturday and Sunday WrestleManias. That's a 2-parter. SummerSlam, 2-night event. Like you're just like, we couldn't do these one nights anymore. We have to break these up, so people have to burn their whole weekend, like 9 hours of wrestling content just on that. So I just think we're in this content era of just we don't like quantity over quality, and I think that's just what's going to happen. And if we go to 14 teams, like we're gonna have more days, but that's just what it is. Like, I think there are some people who are like, "Oh, how can you complain about more football?" It's like, yeah, it's more football, but like, I kind of don't want to be obligated to watch Tulane versus Penn State on a Thursday playoff game where I'm like, I know Penn State's going to win, but I am going to watch this 3-hour game either way. But I don't know. I mean, I understand like that you don't have to watch this, that, and the other. But I do think this is one of the downfalls of an expanded playoff, is that they're going to spread this out. They're going to figure out how to manage it with the NFL in full swing and getting into their playoff picture. And it's just going to be, they're just fighting for eyeballs and trying to get as many people watching this as possible. And hey, that's just, it's going to be weird, but we'll get used to it, just like we'll get used to SEC on ABC this fall, Matt Green.
It's like the anchor man. Like I'll eat the shit. Like I'll do it. You know, they know we're gonna do it. You'll eat that cat poop right now. So yeah, I agree with you. I think unfortunately this is kind of the direction college football is going. And the Friday, I don't hate the Friday night games. I feel like it was a cool thing the Pac-12 was starting to do, and maybe that's kind of why the Big Ten's like, you know, we did kind of like, you know, take the Pac-12, so I guess we can do this Friday night thing. Maybe what? Actually, are those going to be West Coast games more times than not? I don't know, but that's
I mean,
why
no, it's Big Ten, so the majority are like, I mean, they're UCLA. I did notice that the Big Three are not included. I don't think Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are not on the Friday nights.
It's just college football is played on Saturdays for a reason. It's
Yeah.
like we all have, so many people have Saturdays off, and it's just like you watch games all day. It's just, it sucks when you get to the postseason.
Well, hold on. I do like
and
action in the
change
middle of the
things
week.
up.
I used to love that Big East game on Thursday night when it was like Louisville at Rutgers on a Thursday night.
They
That was
used to
pretty
have those
cozy.
legit
I didn't
Big
hate
East
that.
ACC games. Yeah,
No.
like there's that South Carolina would always get down there on
Yeah.
Thursday night. But oh yeah, that was one thing I guess we didn't talk about last 6 weeks with Georgia. Georgia Tech being on that Black Friday this year
Egg
after
Bowl got
Thanksgiving.
moved to Friday too.
Yeah, and I think some people aren't too happy about that just because that is a Friday night in Georgia high school state football. You know, it's like that's a big deal. It's gonna be the state playoffs.
Well, no,
at
they're
that
not.
point.
So they moved that. Did you see Georgia high school football is taking that week off now? So Georgia, for the first time ever, so they are skipping that week. It's a bye week in the middle of the playoffs, so they're not doing playoff games in Georgia.
Wow,
that
I'm glad
weekend.
you said that. Well, that's awesome that they decided to do that. Kirby Smart is probably like, look, this is the only way we're putting this game on Friday night. I gotta be out there recruiting.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's cool. But the last thing I'll say, like the Monday night, I have a theory about the Monday night championship game.
Mm-hmm.
I think the TV network execs, they see we put that Monday game, the college basketball too. The Final Four is always played on that Saturday and then Monday. They get good TV ratings, I think, because more people are at their individual homes. So I think more TV sets are tuned in to the games. And so they're like, oh, these do great TV ratings. Fans must love this. But it's like the fans, I don't know how TV ratings work. You know, I'm not, that's not my life. But it's something to do with more TVs being tuned in, right? If you got a couple hundred people gathered at a bar watching a game, obviously they have multiple TVs and stuff. But like, I imagine those numbers can be different. But if everyone is actually in their homes on a Monday night, that to me that would mean that there's more individual TV sets that are tuned into the game, and so they see this and they're like, oh, well, the fans must want this. When no fan really wants the championship on Monday night, they want that on Saturday, like it's been all season.
Also, I don't even care if it's a Monday, but like earlier. Like, I feel like they're getting later and later, these start times where it's like the game should not be over around midnight. Like, that's crazy. Like, these games should not be starting this. Like, this is crazy town.
That's how you know we're getting real old. Like, we've talked about the Super Bowl Sunday, like, or the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday being like a holiday forever, you know, because it's like, it's such a big game that everyone's watching. So that was always the best part about college football, was that it's still the weekend tomorrow after you stay up late and watch games.
Well, Matt Green, as we continue our off-season theme weekly episodes here, this week we got ESPN's FPI rating reactions that come in post-transfer spring transfer portal here, the Football Power Index, which I love, and is usually a pretty spot-on indicator of how good a team is. And that doesn't mean that's going to be their record, but like, I love all the projections, the Power Index, the FPI, like 6 wins, make the playoff, all that kind of stuff. Like, I just spent a lot of time going through that this week, Matt Green. But your first reaction, because I thought there were some really surprising things that popped up in here in terms of projected win-loss totals, winning the national title, this, that, and the other. I thought it was pretty fascinating. So from your perspective, Matt Green, what was your biggest thing? Because for me, I'll just say out of the gate, the top 4 FPI, and we'll go ahead and spoil that: Georgia, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, in that order. I think we've all just kind of circled like that's going to be the Final Four. And it's kind of like those are just the 4 tier 1 teams to me this year. And it's just really clean. Like the numbers, like the anecdotal stuff from you and I just feel like off the dome, that's probably where we would go. And it just feels like the numbers like them. We like them. We look at the roster and like the staff, the players, everything else. It just feels like those 4 are just kind of in their own tier this year. And it just to see them in FPI, who likes them a lot too. Those 4 have the highest probability of making the playoff this year. So I don't know. I thought that was my strongest takeaway, is the big 4 there going into this year.
Yeah, I would say I have 2 answers, because like I have a strongest takeaway and kind of a first takeaway. And my very first thought is, seeing Oregon with that group you just named, like they don't feel like they're there yet. Like they're a really good team, like, but it's like I mean, this is a team that's yet to win a conference title, under Dan Lanning. Like, you had Washington this past year, Kalen DeBoer is no longer in your conference. And now he's not only is he did he leave the Pac-12? Like, but now he's going to join the Big Ten. Like, we don't even know like how Oregon stacks up with these Big Ten teams. Like, it's almost like when you're like an American League pitcher and you like sign with a National League team, like before they had DHs. I don't know. Like, it feels like it's like almost like a transition you have to make. Now there's an extra hitter in the lineup when you're going to the AL to play a DH.
Don't tell Mizzou that. Mizzou was out here. They didn't need to adjust. They jumped right into the SEC and were like, we run the East immediately. And then
year two though, it was year two was when they first won the East. But you look at what Ohio State has been, what Penn State has been, what Michigan has been in recent years. Like, to think Oregon's going to come in and just be the best team in that conference. Like, I do think the Pac-12 had a case for being a better conference in the Big Ten last year, but that was kind of a 1-year blip. It wasn't necessarily, it definitely hadn't been a better conference collectively. So I just feel like seeing Oregon up there at 2 is just kind of like, wow, are they already there? Like, are we sure Dylan Gabriel is like a winning quarterback? Like, he's a good player, but like, I don't know. I still feel like I need to see a lot more from Dylan Gabriel. And obviously, if we're just judging their pre-Oregon careers, he's been a lot better than Bo Nix pre-Oregon. So, maybe he has the same type of boost when he goes to Oregon, but I don't know. I'm a little hesitant on Oregon.
I feel that, but Dylan Gabriel, I think, is going to be really good for them. I think they've recruited extremely well. You look at both lines of scrimmage, I think they're going to be dominant. I think this group, when you look at their skill position talent, who they're bringing back, like Dan Lanning, like you said, he hasn't done it. He loses to Washington twice last year. He couldn't get over that hump. But you lose Bo Nix, you lose Troy Franklin. I just look at where they're going to, like, Evan Stewart was a sneaky, gigantic portal addition for them, who I think is a really, really good player. And I think he's going to be really good for Oregon this year. You got a lot of talent out wide. Tess Johnson's a really good player. Trayshawn Holden's a good player. Like, they're going to be solid at the skill position guys. They have a lot of transfers in the back end, like Jabbar Muhammad from Washington. He comes over as one of their corners. They bring in Cody Savage, but they got dudes, like, especially like Jordan Birch on the edge. They're going to have a lot of talent rushing the passer. I think they're going to have a really strong defensive line. I think they're going to be strong in the trenches. But to your point, like, it is kind of wild to see them like ahead of Ohio State, ahead of Penn State, ahead of Michigan. And we'll get into Michigan in a second because I think that's pretty interesting too when it comes to the numbers here. But I look at the schedule. Getting Ohio State at home is really nice for them. Like, that's going to be one of the biggest games, if not maybe the biggest regular season game in the Big Ten this year. And then you look at the back end, you get Washington at home. Washington's obviously going through a transition post Kalen DeBoer. At Wisconsin might be sneaky interesting late because that's right before you got to go and host Washington to end things. This is a great year to have to go to Michigan because it's kind of a transition year. We'll get into them in a second. Like, it's always difficult to win the Big House, but there was a good time to go and try and do that if you're Oregon. It's this year. I don't know. I think it's a pretty manageable schedule. And I look at this and I think Dylan Gabriel's probably going to be a Heisman finalist if I had to guess going into this year. And I think Oregon's going to be really good. Dan Lanning's done a really good job. But like you said, we have to see it. We have to see him eventually get over the hump here. But I would be surprised if they're not at the very least in the playoff and kind of.
No, I definitely think they'll be a playoff.
They did the best offense in college football last year, right? Weren't they number one in scoring?
They were definitely up there. What's the best atmosphere they ever played in out in the Pac-12? Washington, probably.
Washington's a good. I mean, Oregon State's Corvallis is sneaky. Like, it's
exactly Corvallis, Oregon. Like, they don't even have 4 sides in that stadium. Like, going at the Big House at Camp Randall, like, they haven't been in environments like that. And so I think there's something to be said about that. Like, even Dylan Gabriel himself, like, the Big 12, it's got some good programs, of course, but like, he didn't have to play at Texas. Obviously, the neutral site, the Cotton Bowl, it's a big time atmosphere, of course. But there's not a lot of 100,000 seat stadiums, 90,000 seat stadiums in the Big 12. You know, like even Dylan Gabriel, I feel like this is a bigger stage than he's been on, and it's a different brand in the Big 10. Like this is a good, like, you know, kind of settling an argument the last few years. Like, are they playing the most elite defense in the Big 10, or do they have are half of these teams in the conference like some of the worst offensive teams in the country? Like, I think if Oregon comes in and is hanging 50 spots on everybody in this conference, then maybe these defenses have been a little overrated the last couple of years. But maybe Oregon comes in and they go, on the road at Wisconsin and put up 13 points or something. Like, I think it remains to be seen. Maybe they get held to single digits at Michigan, because that's the number one team I think everyone's sleeping on right now. Like, seeing them at 12 in the FPI, like, they definitely lost a lot, but they just seem like a team that had such a strong foundation. Like, the floor is only so low for Michigan. Like, they're going to be a playoff contender, and I would be surprised if they don't make the playoff, only because the Big Ten's probably getting 3, maybe 4 teams in, at least 3, I would probably think. And so you lose what, 1 regular season game the last 3 years? Is that were they undefeated in 2022 and then lost? Was TCU the first loss, I want to say? I think
yes.
Michigan State beat them the first time they went to the playoff.
2022, I think they were undefeated in the regular season.
And then 2021, I think that Michigan State team beat them for their only loss of the season. So, yeah, 1 regular season loss the last 3 years. Like, Michigan, it's hard to just think that this team,
yes.
like, that's going to be just a winnable game going on the road if you're Oregon. Like, it is a winnable because you're Oregon, so every game is winnable, but it's not going to be easy by any means. And Ohio State, even coming to your place, like, Ohio State could be the best team in the country this year, like Georgia included. Like, Ohio State is absolutely loaded.
Yeah, I don't disagree, sir. Who will be this talented? And you look at their FPI, if you look at their FPI and everything else, and yet the numbers aren't going to match up what their win-loss total is based on their schedule and everything else. Who do you think the numbers really like that unfortunately the schedule is just not going to allow them to fully unlock how talented they actually are?
I mean, I don't think they're this talented, but if you have Florida as the 20th ranked team in FPI, like, we all know they're not going to be ranked 20th at the end of the season. Like, even in any sort of power ranking, they probably won't be ranked 20th.
Well, I heard Pate talking about Florida this week. I think he said, like, if Florida goes 9-3, like, or 8, maybe even 8-4. I think he said 9-3. That, like, they have, like, it's gonna, with this schedule, like the hardest schedule in college football, like a 9-3 Florida means they went through the gauntlet. Like, it's an unbelievable season. So, like, they should be in the CFP. Like, they should be in the CFP over like a 12-1.
Florida should host a first round playoff game, probably. Like, that team. I mean, how many top 10, 15 wins are they going to have if they go 9-3? Like, I think this Florida team, I think 6-6 gets Napier back for 2025. I don't think there's any way that a program like the University of Florida can have 3 straight losing seasons and not fire their coach. I think it's just, I'm not sure he deserves it. The schedule is super difficult. And so if they go 5-7, I don't know that they got worse than a year ago. They could be a lot better than they were a year ago and still go 5-7 and do it similarly to how they did it last year. Because what did they start 5-2 last year and ended up 5-7?
Yeah.
Like, they could easily do something like that, and hopefully they start 5-1 or something, because that last, I think, 6 games or so of the season, it's got like 5 preseason top 10 teams on it. Like, it's just absurd. So if you're going to say that Florida is the 20th ranked team in power ranking, there's absolutely no chance they finish there.
No, I mean, if Graham Mertz, I guess, makes that kind of leap, because he's solid, he's not going to turn the ball over a bunch. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way. But, like, I love that Florida's like chaos team right out of the gate, because if Florida beats Miami, which they very much could, like, that puts Miami into a tailspin immediately, where it's like all the pressure is suddenly cooking on Miami. Like, Florida is like this chaos team every week where they can really throw a wrench into a lot of expectations.
And Tennessee too. Like, what are you guys going to say if Florida beats this Tennessee team for a second year in a row?
That's tough.
Like, and it's early, right? It's probably like the 3rd or 4th game.
No, it's actually later this year. We play because Tennessee. I think it's October. Tennessee does not play a home important SEC game until Florida, and that's mid-October. And they get Florida and Alabama back-to-back without a bye.
Mid-October, huh?
Yeah.
So I got to
because they go to
up
Oklahoma for
here.
that, where they used to go and play Florida in that spot, that September 21st spot. They'll be in Oklahoma, and then they're at
October 12th.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Tennessee does not have an important home game until Florida in mid-October.
That's interesting.
I feel
schedule. Like Florida, Tennessee, that's a September game.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Well, I mean, it won't be an every year game soon. Like, it's just, you could take what you get with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as they keep playing it, I'm not gonna complain.
But yeah, I like Florida in this regard. I think it's interesting, and sticking with the SEC here, Kentucky, the numbers don't like Kentucky this year. Like Brock Vandagriff, they finally get a 5-star quarterback in there and transfer. You lose Liam Cohen back to the NFL. Unfortunately, you bring in Boise's offensive coordinator here to replace him. But
how many years does the 5-star rating hold up? Like, do you have like is it expiring as after
well,
like
they
2
do
years?
change it in transfers, because I think he's a 4-star transfer. I think he was a 5-star guy. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that the numbers don't like Kentucky. Like, they're bottom 4 in the SEC going into next year, and I feel like there should be a lot more optimism. Like, I would think the numbers would like them a little bit more, because we know the defense is going to be solid with them year over year. Under Mark Stoops, I know it was weirdness where he almost left but didn't leave to Texas A&M. But like, they have a strong receiving core. I think the offensive line should be better than it was a year ago. I think Brock Vandagriff will be an upgrade over what they saw at quarterback last year. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised.
He's also a total mystery box kind of too, though.
Yeah. It's a mystery box, but it's like a fun mystery box. Like, I'm surprised to see.
It could Kentucky. Even be a boat.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you like, because you get Barry and Brown still there. You still have Dane Key. Like, they have talent out wide. Old friend Gerald Mincy looking like he'll be the right tackle there. But I don't know. I would assume that there was going to be more optimism, and the numbers would like Kentucky a little bit more than where they're at. I mean, they're down there with Vandy, Mississippi State, and Arkansas in the SEC. So I don't know. That's weird. And if you're a Kentucky fan, you might want to be a little bit nervous that the numbers don't like Kentucky. Like, what if Kentucky slides this year with Texas and Oklahoma in the fold? What if Kentucky, like, the Stoops era peaked and we're nearing, there's just less juice, and like, he already thought about leaving once? And I don't know. What if it is a down year for Kentucky and it doesn't go well for Brock and company? I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be like, shocked if Kentucky was, in the bottom, 4 or 5 teams in the SEC. Like, Texas and Oklahoma coming in, like, it really kind of changes the pecking order in this conference. Like, Kentucky sitting in the SEC East, that's been, the weaker division for about a decade. Like, that was their shot. It was like coming into seasons being like, they could be the second best team in the East this year or something like that. Maybe they get 2018, that Georgia-Kentucky game was essentially for the East. That was the one year they kind of got to that point. But now, without the divisions, it's like, yeah, they may have been second in the East that year, but were they like the 5th or 6th best team in the SEC, like, at best? Like, yeah. So, not disrespecting Kentucky, but I think the divisions are going to hurt, someone like Missouri and Kentucky. And this isn't even about the schedule, right? The FPI, this is just kind of a power rating. So they're not even predicting anything, but I mean, they jump right into it with South Carolina week 2 and then Georgia in week 3. And have to go at Ole Miss in week 5. So it's not.
Well, that's a good point. Is like, they used to be able to hide because they'd stack up those wins before they get the Georgia buzzsaw, where it's like they're 6-0, and we always thought, like, the networks love to talk themselves into like, oh, undefeated Kentucky could be spicy here, and then you're like
5-0, and you hadn't actually watched one of their games yet.
Well, they can't do that anymore, like you said, and they're right there. You get South Carolina at home and Georgia at home, but it doesn't matter. Like, you're losing that Georgia game, you're losing at Ole Miss. But then, like, this is actually kind of crazy. So from September 28th to November 23rd, they are at Ole Miss, at Florida, at Tennessee, and at Texas. Oof.
Oh, wow.
Those are 4 road games in a month span. That's tough.
I mean, I think their season, it's hard to be, and in Louisville at a conference too, it's like, that's not going to be easy either. So yeah, I think a lot of it, it's about like, did they strike gold in Brock Vandagriff? Because, when you're getting a transfer from a program that has, an elite player, it's possible his backup is also an elite player. He just wasn't good enough to beat out Carson Beck. So, there is a chance that Vandegrift is this former 5-star and he lives up to the billing. He's a dual threat, making plays with his legs and everything. But I don't know. He's a first-year starter in the SEC. And the schedule, it's not really built for a first-year starter. Like, you're kind of jumping right in, even though I don't think like South Carolina is going to be like anything great this year. Like, you do get South Carolina and Georgia at home early in the season, but I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for a first-year starter.
Absolutely. Final thing here, Matt Green. Michigan, who we talked about a little bit here, 4th best in the Big Ten right now. They are only given a 25% chance of making the college football playoff as a whole here in the 12-team playoff era. The defending champs, the odds aren't even good that they make it back to the playoff and defend it. And you look at it and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm surprised they weren't more aggressive in the portal at quarterback, because Matt Green, there are some question marks there, and there are no obvious answers, and they're having to replace a lot. I understand they're going to put the ball in Donovan Edwards' hands a lot, and he's going to be a really good player for them. They're going to be good in the trenches again. But like, I have real concerns about Michigan. Like, I think Michigan's like a 9-3, 10-2, maybe max team going into next year. I don't know. I wonder if people are ready for that, because I've seen, like, you just kind of assume that if you won the college football national championship the year prior, especially in a 12-team era, if you're in a Power 2 conference and you're one of the big boys like Michigan is, you should have enough to keep that going. I understand there's different variables here with Jim Harbaugh moving on the NFL, but you kept the staff mostly together, and there's just not a lot of optimism with the numbers. And I think a lot of that has to do with the schedule, but a lot of it has to do with quarterback. Like, I'm just surprised. Like, Ohio State addressed it. They're like, Cobb Court not working. We're going to go out and get Will Howard, get Julian Sayin from Alabama. We're going to beef this up. We're not letting that happen again. Michigan's going internal. And I don't really love any of their options here, Matt Green.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm not super high on Michigan, but I feel like, the recent history, and obviously Jim Harbaugh's gone, so it's not the same program, but the internal hire kind of makes you feel like you could keep a lot of that continuity. You obviously lost a bunch of dudes to the NFL draft as well, but I feel like we're wrong if we're selling Michigan. It's like, I'm not necessarily buying Michigan, but I feel like you definitely shouldn't be selling them. Like, let's just hold where you're at, right? So yeah. I don't know. I think part of me looks at, Alex Orji, I think, is kind of the favorite right now to be the starter, right? Like, this is going to sound disrespectful.
A lot of Robbie Ashford vibes there from what I'm reading.
Right. People are going to think this is disrespectful, but it's like, what are they really replacing at the quarterback position? Like, JJ McCarthy, I know he got drafted first round, but like, I don't know one person that's a college football fan that thought he was a good college quarterback. Like, just when you talk amongst your friends that watch college football, like, NFL scouts, yeah, sure, they fall in love with him. He wouldn't be the first quarterback that NFL scouts fell in love with and was a huge failure in the NFL, right? Like, he could be good. Who knows? He could be in a good situation. But I watched Michigan play last year, and I don't think their quarterback won them one game the entire season. Part of that's because of how talented they were, and a lot of those guys are in the NFL now. But I just don't think it's necessarily the biggest thing to replace. If they can still have an elite offensive line, an elite running game, they can still bully teams the way they did, and the quarterback can just kind of pick his spots and make plays here and there, because JJ McCarthy was not the reason this team won a national championship a year ago.
But he's good, and he went number 13, I think, in the draft, Matt Green. There was still something that
Trubisky went second, all right?
Well, he also was he was feisty. He was really good in the playoff games. Like, that's where JJ earned his stripes.
What? He threw like 150 yards against Alabama.
He was making plays, especially in the Bama game. On the run, he was making plays.
He had the one drive at the end.
He was making plays out of structure.
That pick that got taken off the stat sheet, we all saw it. It was a terrible interception. Like, what? Was it like the first play of the game? Like, that's right, yeah. Right at the very start, like, we all saw it. It might not be in the stat sheet, but we saw it. He was so mediocre, man.
He's fine, Matt. Like, I think you're being a little too harsh on JJ McCarthy.
Like, you can replace fine.
I don't know. So, I mean, are you optimistic? Do you think the numbers are too low on Michigan? Would you still put them at that top end of the Big Ten, or should they be right there with Ohio State still? Or do you think a drop down to tier 2 is more likely, like to the Penn State territory, that 9-3, 10-2?
I think the 9-3, 10-2 is definitely like reasonable, but I think like with the schedule, like 9-3, 10-2, this is without a doubt, like this team goes 10-2 and they might be like a 6 or 7 seed in the playoff. Like they're a no doubt playoff team if they go 10-2, because on top of this conference schedule, we got Oregon and Ohio State. Like they got Texas out of conference.
At
like
home,
that's a massive game. But I'm just saying, like, Texas is going to be a preseason, number 2, number 3? Yeah. Like, they're going to be right there. So this Michigan schedule is brutal. Like, Georgia and Michigan, the last couple years, were able to slide with some weaker schedules. I think Michigan more so than Georgia. But these 2024 schedules, they're paying it back. They both have gauntlets this year.
Yeah. Well, Matt Green, that's all I've got. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here tonight?
Last thing I was going to mention just about this FPI. It's interesting seeing the conference or the percentage of making the playoff, because you have like a team that they essentially think is better, right? If they're ranking Auburn and Florida 19th and 20th, they think they're better than Kansas State and then Utah. But you're going to see those teams in the playoff. Not only in the playoff, you're going to see Kansas State, Utah. Who do you think's the next best contender in the Big 12? Like, you're going to see one of those teams with the top 4 seed. They're going to be a top 4 seed in this playoff this year.
Yeah.
How long is that format going to last?
I mean, we'll see how long these conferences. I mean, keep it all together. I mean, it's a year-to-year thing, man. It is a year-to-year thing here.
Yeah, that's like you got Florida with an 8% chance to make the playoff. Is that? And then Kansas State 2 spots below them with a 22% chance to make the playoff. It's they have to take different roads, much different roads to get there.
Tennessee though, top 10 roster, 36% chance of making the playoff, higher than Mizzou, higher than Florida State, higher than LSU, higher than Ole Miss.
Missouri is the one that I think no one is paying attention to, because I think most people think this is going to be a down year for Alabama, right?
Like down year, and like Kalen DeBoer, down year, I think is like 9-3 at the worst for him. I think Alabama
9-3 would be like the worst season Nick Saban's ever had, right?
Yeah.
So it's going. We all think it's going to take a step back, even though you think you were still right about your 8-4 prediction somehow. I was really.
I mean, that it felt like an 8-4 team last year.
No, it did. But a lot of beatable games. But you look at Alabama is probably the toughest game on Missouri's entire schedule next year. And like, that's, if you ever want to go to Tuscaloosa, to Bryant-Denny Stadium, like this is probably the year to do it. So
yeah,
like they have at A&M too, which like year 1, like in a transition year, like Oklahoma at home, like Missouri, like sneaky has like one of the most like generous schedules in the entire conference. Like if they get like to 5-0, 6-0, like this team is like a guaranteed playoff team.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we're back. How's it feel?
We did it. It's good, man. You know, we can't take that much time off again. You know, no, I missed you too much.
I appreciate that, man. I missed you too. And you know, I think it works because like we're, as the show and everything else, we're leaning in with my day job and what we're doing over at TPL Tennessee, TPL Georgia, and all that good stuff. I think there's just a lot of crossover between the two. So I'm glad we're able to still do this as I go Tennessee heavy each and every day on this very feed, but we still have college football. And I think there's still just a lot of Tennessee fans that don't like Matt Green on this program with his Georgia biases. Not that I ever have any biases on this program, as many can attest to. So that's always good. But I'm glad that this, I think, will be able to make it all work as we dive in and kind of, you know, get more granular and give the people what they want, which is Tennessee football content and some college football content too. Because I think every Tennessee football fan is also watching every college football game. So I think it's good that we're gonna be able to get both and keep this thing humming this offseason.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Well, I will talk to you very soon.
Yes, sir.